Hey guys, welcome to another edition of the Best of Netflix. I'm sure you want to go relax, and so do I, so let's get through these picks. First up for action, I have V for Vendetta. Now this is probably one of the most badass, political, uprising, destruction type of movies that I've ever seen. It stars Natalie Portman and the guy from The Matrix, who's in a Guy Fawkes mask, basically exposed corruption in their government and kick ass along the way. The story is a lot more complicated than that, but I don't want to give away too much in case you haven't seen it, because it's definitely worth watching. It's just action-packed, and there's things that you sort of learn about society along the way that may irritate you, but their overcoming of it is definitely worth watching. For comedy, I decided to go with Man of the House. This one has Tommy Lee Jones and 5 cheerleaders. What else more do you need in a movie? But in case you do need some more backstory to what this movie's about, Tommy Lee Jones plays a Texas Ranger who must protect these 5 cheerleaders who are from Texas University because they witnessed a murder. So he has to protect them and sort of guard them, and there's some other story. I know that kind of sounds weird when I say it out loud now, but it's a funny movie. And again, Tommy Lee Jones and cheerleaders, so it's the best of both worlds. For family, I decided to go with Zathura. Now this is like Jumanji in space, basically. It's about kids who play a board game that goes pretty much insane and they get their house launched into space. It's kind of a crazy story, but it's actually a lot of fun. It's super underrated. It's directed by the guy who did Iron Man and The Jungle Book, Jon Favreau. It stars a young Josh Hutcherson. Dax Shepard plays an astronaut. And Kristen Stewart is actually in it in little bits and pieces before she went all super emo and stuff. But, it's a family adventure that I think you and your family would enjoy because it's like Jumanji, and if you like Jumanji, you will definitely like this one. For horror, I decided to go From Dusk Till Dawn. Now, this one has George Clooney and Quentin Tarantino as fugitives on the run to Mexico. And on their way there, they run into this family who they take hostage to get them across the border a little bit easier. Then they end up hiding out at this bar place. And this bar has a secret. And I'm not going to tell you what it is, but basically there's monsters. I guess I did tell you what it was. But this one pretty much laid the groundwork for a lot of monster movies. It's pretty dated, the visuals, for the monsters and stuff like that, because it was made in 1996. But like I said, it laid the groundwork for a lot of visual stuff. And Selma Hayek's in it as well. Classic Quentin Tarantino, Rodriguez style, which is... It sounds weird, but when they work together, it's weird, but it's still good. So I think it's worth checking out. On to documentaries. Now, I chose Killing Them Safely. Now, this one is actually about tasers. It was about how tasers were introduced. It was about tasers were sort of given to police officers. It's about how, positive aspects to tasers. And then about midway through the film, maybe a little bit more, they start getting into some of the negative aspects of tasers, which I really hadn't considered before or even heard about. But it's very eye-opening to see it and presented in this way in a documentary, where you sort of get, maybe not necessarily all of the facts, but you get a little bit more story than what you're used to hearing. Now, I'm not going to say I'm pro-taser or anti-taser or pro-gun or anti-gun or anything like that. That's for you guys to decide what you think about it. But I think it's worth watching because you find out some things maybe you didn't think about before, or you find out some things that maybe the public hasn't necessarily known about tasers. And I think that's kind of interesting when you find out information that you didn't originally know, even if it's something that you're for or against. So like I said, it's definitely worth checking out for at least that aspect, and you can decide what you feel about tasers. Now on to drama. I decided to go with The Giver. Now this one is based on a book by Lois Lowry, who I've always meant to read this book but never did. So instead I decided to watch the movie. Basically the movie is about this kid named Jonas who's in this perfect society, away from everything, maybe post-apocalyptic they kind of imply. But they live in this perfect utopia society. And then he gets assigned the job of being with the Giver, which basically holds all of the memories from the past of human existence basically. But it's definitely a cool movie, him transitioning and learning things that he didn't necessarily know, and mostly him having to keep it to himself. But probably one of the most interesting aspects of this film, at least for me, was the use of color. It's very much like Pleasantville in a way, where it starts out black and white, which I didn't actually know it would be, and then it slowly moves towards color. there's certain aspects, and it's not like Pleasantville where like all of a sudden a t-shirt will be color or a tree will be color or something like that. But the way that it moves from perfect black and white, and then the scale moves into some slight color, and then into full color on certain aspects, it's beautiful. I actually thought it was really, really cool. That was probably one of the coolest things I liked about the entire movie. As Jonas is learning all these things about his society, things that are maybe corrupt, things that he doesn't like or agree with, that moves from black and white to color. And I just think that's something that's really cool. It was a great use of transition, and I think that is something that maybe an audience would enjoy. Maybe it wasn't necessarily critically acclaimed or anything like that, but it's worth watching just for that cool transition, because as he learns, it becomes more colorful. And that's a really cool concept. For classics, I decided to go with The Usual Suspects. Now, this one is a classic whodunit. It's basically about these guys being interrogated who did this heist type of thing, and they're trying to figure out who the boss is, Kaiser Soze. And this movie contains one of the biggest plot twists in movie history, and I love plot twists. So it's one of those films that you have to see because other movies reference it all the time, and so you definitely have to see it just to understand the reference, where you're going to see it everywhere. If you've seen Scary Movie, I think it's the first one, they reference it. They reference this thing in so many ways in TV shows and movies, so you have to see the original, where it came from, in order to understand what it means. So it's worth checking out in that aspect. And of course, Kevin Spacey, Benicio del Toro gave amazing performances. And like I said, it's one of those things where you have to watch it just to understand all the references to it. So it's worth checking out, at least in that aspect. And it's a classic, so you have to watch it. At least one time in your life, at least. For you binge watchers out there and TV watchers, I decided to go with Supernatural. Now, there's a ton of different stories for Supernatural. It's hard to really pinpoint one specific story. The main storyline sort of changes season to season, but the basic premise is that these two brothers travel across the country and basically kick ass. They kill monsters, they fight ghosts, ghouls, werewolves, vampires, you name it, demons, angels. They're going to probably fight it if it's a monster or whatever. But it's definitely an interesting show. But it is a massive undertaking, I'm not going to lie to you. There are 10 seasons of this show on Netflix, which encompass about like 218 episodes, somewhere around there. And they're still doing season 11, which ended in May, actually. So that's going to be up when season 12 probably comes out on the CW. So it's a massive undertaking, so take your time with this one. But I think it's worth watching. There's a ton of hilarious moments. It's very dramatic. Things start out sort of not necessarily bright and shiny, but you see the changes that happen between Sam and Dean from episode 1 to where they are now. And there's a ton of crap that happens to them in the entire span of these 10 and 11 seasons. Like I said, take your time. It's a massive undertaking, but it's worth watching for sure. Well, guys, those are my best of Netflix picks for this week. Thank you so much for watching. Like always, please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share these videos, and we'll see you in the next one.